Usually, friends, hi, I'm host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. Welcome to tonight's broadcast premiere of this live stream. Normally, when I'm triggered by a form of, you know, frame contradiction, it's normally either NI used too much or TI used not enough. So when I was a little annoyed or triggered by some of the stuff Cone Man said earlier, that was NI being used too much or not well enough. Whether it's because, that could manifest in the first slot, it could manifest in the fourth slot, but it's pretty clear to me from listening to him that Cone Man is an NI user. When he gets too holistic and makes overbroad statements about stuff that, for it to be informative, in my opinion, needs to be more carefully parsed out or something, I might get a little triggered by that. That's normal. TI polar triggering me is very normal, be it Noam Chomsky kind of TI polar, where it sort of ideationally sounds good, but is filled with metaphor and bullshit, or whether it's ESFP style TI polar, where it's a combination of a bad NI and a lack of parsing, right? But tonight, the kind of function conflict that caused me stress, has caused me, and is causing me still distress, is the kind of function conflict that occurs when you're an intuition dominant person and you come across ESTJ NI polar. This I will explain in a specific event that's occurred. So I've been working with Jeffrey and Jeffrey's mom, helping him, polish up some admissions essays, talking to him about what strategy he should use for the admissions essays, etc. Been talking to him and his mom about this for quite some time. Today, I talked to her 2 times earlier in the day, basically listening to her fret about all the possible ways in which her current approach to these admissions essays, or whatever approach, might somehow inadequately consider all the possible factors that somebody might want or whatever. But then tonight she called me, and it was really the straw that broke the camel's back. The NI polar was so poundingly offensive to me that I was just straight up infuriated by it. So one of the essays in which Jeffrey took my advice, he wrote about the topic I said to write about, is directly responsive to the prompt. There's no possible way that you could critique that essay as bad. But Jeffrey's mom went and talked to the counselor and said, what do you think of this? And she said, well, I think it's too complex. I think that you need to make it more simple so anybody could understand it, because they only spend 5 minutes on each admissions packet anyway. Okay, well, if that's your justification for making an essay simplistic or whatever, then why are you caring so much about the essays at all, right? They're just going to glance at it. But regardless, the one essay that I felt had been, well, there were a couple of them actually, but that I felt were correctly done strategically. In other words, took an intuitive approach to the prompt and took the mindset of standing out by virtue of one's intellect and writing skills rather than blending in and articulated a bunch of previous accomplishments or something. Well, Jeffrey's mom obviously thinks that the best way to write an essay is to get two people of completely competing visions, mutually exclusive visions, to both work on it and have each one of them undo the work of the other, as they go along. And then when she tells me they're only going to spend 5 minutes on it, it's like, then why the fuck have you wasted so much of my time? Since you're not even listening to me. And the bottom line is, the reason she's wasting so much of my time, the reason she's infuriating me, is because she's unipolar. She doesn't get the idea that things emerge from a vision and they need to be pursuant to that vision, or else they rapidly lose their way. So Jeffrey's mom might believe that my vision for how to apply to colleges and write essays and what your mechanism that attain success is. For me, it's you want to stand out as being intellectually more robust than your peers and a better writer. It's not that you use the essay to take the opportunity to list a bunch of things that you could list on just a resume or on a list of extracurricular activities or something. And it's not to share the meaning that you've learned from these experiences, right? It's such an SI heavy frame of reference and it's so non-intuitive. In reality, what you want to do if you have an essay and you're an iconoclastic person like Jeffrey is be iconoclastic in the essay. Be who you actually are. Let the system do what it's designed to do. Evaluate you on your merits and either admit you or not admit you to a university accordingly. Instead, ESTJ and bipolar think that there's no way to succeed in this process except by trying to figure out what colleges want and then give them exactly that, rather than allowing the college to choose from a selection of possible applicants who have honestly engaged with the process and thereby have some ability to pick and choose the kind of students they actually want to have. You've got every single thing that you're putting on your application strategized out from years in advance. Even the extracurricular activities are just there for the purpose of impressing colleges, so you can get into a good college. And the reason you get into a good college is so that then you can get a good job. Well, I mean, at what point is a human being allowed to be who they are, authentically engage with anything, if everything's going to be instrumental to a future goal? It's unipolar at its absolute worst and most infuriating. I get it. We all have our polar, and just as I find that thing that happened tonight incredibly infuriating, I know that plenty of other people find my FI polar infuriating. Plenty of people who think that I'm not considerate enough of other people's feelings and such, they might try to portray my FI polar as either haughtiness, self-importance, something other than what it is, which is just my MO, And I get that Chawa's MO is SI tool, NI polar, TE dom. I mean, but at a certain point, she's got to recognize that there's a certain amount of professional respect you have to show somebody, like if she hires me to consult with me about how to do things, she doesn't have to do what I suggest, but she shouldn't continue to hire me to consult about things while concurrently hiring a different consultant who has exactly the opposite advice and then try to get me to blend the two things together for you. I'm not there to execute strategies that are not mine. If you want to execute her strategies, have her help him write the papers. You know, I'm just not going to play this stupid game anymore where I do work, you come back a couple days later, so you talk to this other person, and now you'd like me to change the work I've done. You're just wasting my time. It's not stressful to me. It's makes me angry. It doesn't make me stressed out. Like, I'm not worried at all about whether or not Jeffrey, I don't care about whether Jeffrey uses this essay or that essay ultimately. I just find it offensive that um that you'd ask me to, it's like, bring me in, how should we make this soup? What kind of soup should we make and how should we make it? We should make this soup and this is how we should make it. Well, this other person says we should make this other soup. So can you blend the two together, please? No, I don't want to make anything resembling that recipe over there. I don't claim to be good at making that recipe because that's a terrible recipe and I would never make it. And I don't like that kind of soup. I certainly don't want to make that kind of soup. And I certainly don't want to degrade my good soup by mixing that horrible soup in with it. And when we have a couple of the soups that I've helped them with be, to my mind, satisfactory because they actually meet my standards, for you to then go and get advice from her to tell you that that essay needs to be made different because it doesn't meet her interface modality, right? Like, well, they're only going to spend a short amount of time on it. So why the fuck do you care at all? Either they're going to spend too short amount of time on it to consider the actual essay you wrote, in which case, then it doesn't matter what you wrote. Or they're just going to skim it real quick to get the gist of it, in which case, again, they're not going to find this essay too complex. They're going to be unsurprised that they can't get the gist of it from just a quick scan, right? Because it's somebody who's done some intelligent work. Anyway, it's infuriating. It's frustrating. I wouldn't call it stressful because I don't have anything on the line, right? It's not. It's probably stressful for her because she feels as though whatever she does or doesn't do is going to directly determine whether or not he gets into college or not. And she'll believe that after he gets in or doesn't, regardless of whether her random notion that she thinks they prioritized to the expense of her child has anything at all to do with the outcome.
Okay, she meant that she feels bad for Jeffrey.
Oh. Well, yeah. I mean, he doesn't seem too stressed out about it, really. She's by far the most stressed out person in the world, as far as I can tell, over no good reason. It's like, it's a total inability to big picture things. She's unable to recognize the fact that she's got like dream kids. And so the thing she's freaking out about is whether he's going to get into Princeton or if he's going to have to go to Columbia. It's like, just step back a second, look at the big picture, and recognize that you're freaking out over the essay portion of an application that purportedly the whole packet they spend 5 minutes on, and you're spending hours and hours and hours fretting about it, talking to me on the phone about it, working with me and Jeffrey on polishing essays, expecting whatever's produced to meet all these various criteria that you have for what something should include, none of which go together. So, she's trying to find this perfect balance, strike this perfect balance between a STEM major and a bullshit major that he's applying in just so we can get in. Not getting the idea that it's like her concern is because Jeffrey's done so much STEM stuff that if he applies to a major that's not STEM related, they're going to see through his ploy. Well, I mean, so then what do you want to do? Now do you want to have him just focus on actual humanities stuff in high school so that he can fake it into humanities and then start learning STEM stuff? Because otherwise it might work against you in the college application.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's just insanity, right? It's pure fucking insanity.
Most kids change their major after freshman or sophomore year anyway because, like, it's incredibly difficult to choose a major at the age of, from at a high school age.
Well, I mean, the thing is, she's probably thinking about it way, way, way too much. If they see that this kid wants to go into philosophy, but he's actually got a lot of STEM experience, they'll probably be like, wow, that puts him ahead of just the humanities kids, right? They might be like, makes me wonder if he's just faking this major so he can switch majors. They might think that. But the point is, you have no reason to believe one or the other thing. And so as a consequence, you might as well just go ahead and be honest about everything and see how it plays out, right?
Being honest about everything it plays out much better than
trying to game it, because if you have any intuitive read this game shit, they're gonna read it as gamed.
Yeah, they are.
They're gonna see right through it.
On this episode of Felicity, they have one of the students. They find out that he lied, or he confesses that he lied about his he lied to get into a school, and it just doesn't turn out well. It's just because they saw through it.
Right. Well, the point is, and then if you're trying to further game the thing because you're concerned if you game it this way, you might get caught gaming it. At some point, stop digging. In other words, stop trying to game the thing. Yeah. Give up on that whole notion that you can out intuit the whole system and simply attain on a quality level that resonates, universally to the best of your ability, and let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. The best thing he could possibly do would be to meta up on all this shit, call out the bullshit while saying, so here you go. It's the first honest essay you've read. You can decide whether you like that honesty and intellectual forthrightness and rigor and want to admit it to this university, or whether you find it off-putting because it's not effacing fucking bullshit that that got designed and executed by committee. The point is, you'll always, in a situation like that, in my opinion, given the sheer volume of people applying, you're going to be better off standing out than you are blending in and proving yourself just as intellectually and creatively dead as everybody else who had their essays designed and executed on their behalf by a committee of adults.
Yeah.
by a committee of adult education professionals who are that is not a population of adults who's particularly uh, wise, smart. I mean, like a college counselor at a high school. What the fuck does this woman know? You know, it's like I'm sure the way she gleans what works is based on the success of the students who in getting into universities, etc. She's not. I guarantee you, she spent zero time actually trying to dispassionately look at the data. In other words, trying to link specific essays to specific outcomes, specific styles of essay, even considering those things. Because if she had, she wouldn't be advocating in favor of such fucking horrible essays. She's a stupid interfacer, like. Anyway, I don't mean to be all harsh. I get it. They can't help it. They were born that way. They can't help it. But I don't need to subject myself to any more triggering. So I am not going to be doing this anymore. If Jeffrey's mom calls me tomorrow, I will say, look, I'm not going to work with Jeffrey anymore on these things until and unless it's abundantly clear to me that we're really on the same page. I already can tell you for sure that's impossible to attain that. So it's going to be the end of this line of work here. Because, you know, I don't want a line item veto here. That's what it boils down to. I don't want a line item veto here. I'm going to veto this whole thing, or I will approve the bill I want. Nothing in between. Since she's not going to craft legislation that's, say, framing the topic of essay crafting as I want, nor cede to my framing of it, then I refuse to do the work. I don't really like the work, but I don't mind doing it because I like those people in general. But when they piss me off that much and show that little respect for me as a professional, then I don't want to do that work anymore. The other reason I don't mind doing that work in general is because I like to know that Rachel's occasionally getting Venmo'd a little bit of money here and there, in addition to, you know, normal allotments. It's just nice to know that when I work with Chloe or Jeffrey, that it results in Rachel having a little extra spending money. but not at the expense of my mental health. I was so upset by this tonight that um, that even after I had forgotten about the conversation, which happened like 5 minutes after I had it, I was watching TV, I was watching this football game and paying attention to that, but I kept having this feeling of like this bad emotional taste in my mouth. What am I mad about? I'm mad about something. Or, oh, and I remembered conversation with Jeffrey's mom, which ended with, I am not going to talk to you anymore about this tonight. If you want to talk about it more, call me tomorrow. Good night. Hung up. I'd already had 2 conversations with her today about this fucking subject. Talk about overthinking something. Talk about putting in an amount of effort that cannot possibly result in proportional gains in terms of his likelihood to be admitted or whatever. I'm just fundamentally operating in a decide and then do, right? So decide what angle of attack you're going to take and then execute that angle of attack. She's in an interface approach that says, do something, check, adjust, do something, check, adjust. Well, I don't work like that. Certainly not when somebody else is checking and adjusting what I've done. That's why I don't want to say those sort of things about interfaces, because I didn't think about it when I stopped myself. I just thought that generally, like, oh, don't be like that, Eric. Don't be all typologically assaultive. But if I had thought about a specific reason, it would have been maybe there's an interfacer here in the live stream. I don't know, maybe like Ruben. And Ruben, I like you. You're not making me angry by telling me how Jeffrey's essay should be when you don't know shit. It's like, we had reached agreement on how to approach this given essay. We all saw eye to eye on this prompt. We agreed that this was an excellent prompt to take a more intuitive, overtly intellectual approach. That, in this instance, it would be better to try to impress than to blend in. But then she hears what this lady has to say about it and decides, well, it needs to be made less complex, less challenging for the reader. Keeping in mind, he's applying things like Princeton, right? MIT, Caltech, Columbia, Harvey Mudd. Where else is he applying? Duke, Rice. Maybe not Duke. Maybe Rice is what I was thinking of.
Duke was there.
Duke was there too?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I said Columbia already. Maybe that's it. Oh, University of Chicago. So, she's one thing that she doesn't get is work smarter, not harder. I think that's yeah. Well, like I said earlier, prior to making that little outburst, as I was saying, we each have our deficits, and just as I'm annoyed by certain specific deficits, other people are just as annoyed by other specific deficits, including my own. Um, it's like the college counselor is thinking, what's broadly emotionally resonant, ignoring the fact that intuitives are going to find this essay offensively inauthentic. She's probably an ESFJ, this lady.
I was thinking ESFJ too.
Yeah. Her advice is very ESFJ-ish advice.
And like
And she's resonating just right with Jeffrey's mom's NI polar, right?
They're both NI polar.
They're both NI polar.
So like what made me think that she was an ESFJ is that like I know you guys are activity partners, but like in my mind she didn't get the
Right. It was too complex because she didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But he's not applying to stupid counselor university.
Yeah.
So, and even if she were reading essays, would that be her response to an essay that crossed her path that was intellectually stout? That this kid's too smart for this college. Is that what she would think? You know, the point is, what's clear about her is the NI polar, the way that she, like Jeffrey's mom, bounces from whatever justification is convenient to justify what she feels like, right? So her justification for why it was too complex was that they only spend 5 minutes on each packet anyway. Okay, well, but you know, that then why can't she just as easily say, because they're going to skim over it, they'll get a grasp of the complexity and sophistication of it, and you don't have to worry about them parsing it out too carefully to note intellectual inadequacies in it. You know, she's got no reason to conclude anything one way or the other from her warrant, right? And that same warrant could be used to undermine everything she's herself has said prior. That's a very anti-polar move. Like, what's more SI tool plus FE Dom than insisting an important thing that Jeffrey included in his essay is the story about how he had heart surgeries as a baby and a speech impediment as a little kid. How in the fuck is that possibly relevant to getting into college? All she's thinking is it's gonna hit on the heartstrings of people who read it, but the only people whose heartstrings would be plucked by that idiocy are ESFJs. Right? Yeah. It's like the only person sitting reading college admissions essays who's going to think that you should pick candidate A over B because candidate A had a speech impediment while they were a little kid is an ESFJ. The only person conceivably recommending the boom, splash, bang, splash, thud theory of college admissions essays is an ESFJ. Who would want to read that besides an ESFJ? Well, how should I write an essay? Tell about an experience you had a long time ago that made you who you are today. Because, you know, all we are our previous experiences lined up in a row. It's so horrible. See if Joseph's sorting hat told you you were an ESFJ. Wow.
He told me he's typed me as an ESFJ. Like I didn't get a typing, but like someone asked him to type me, and he typed me as an ESFJ too.
I mean, it just goes to show you how poor a job he does distinguishing between intuitive and sensor.
Yeah.
He's got himself typed as an ENTP and me typed as an ESTP. So, you know, go figure, right? Welcome to Backwards World.
Yeah, it really is. I'll never forget that meme that he made that said what an ISTJ would do if ice cubes from the ice maker started and fell on the floor. And he said, just sweep it underneath the refrigerator. I was like, an ISTJ? Like,
He
sweeping?
does not understand ISTJs at all. Can you imagine Cameron doing that?
Never.
Never in a million years. He just has everything backwards. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, his sorting hack typed me right. His online test typed me as an ENTP. Oh, you missed basically all the ranting. I'm complaining about Chow Wah and her horrible essay by committee thing that she envisions happening here.
Essay by committee makes the worst kind of essay.
Absolutely. You can't do anything that requires intuition, deliberation, and action with just interface and experiential knowing. And an essay is definitely something that takes intuition, deliberation, and action more than anything else, right? You got to have a clear vision about what you want to say in this essay, what your point is. And you've got to be very deliberative about how exactly to execute it. You probably have to write it, go back, edit it, fix, shift a few things around, yada yada, before it's polished up to match your vision through a process of deliberated action. She wants to approach the whole essay writing process as though intuition were not the first step in the process. Having a vision were not the first step. As though all visions could be combined to create a better vision than any vision by itself could be. The classic Swiss Army knife anti-polar move. By and large, it's better to have a set of knives, each of which does a specific thing, than it is to have a Swiss Army knife, right? So whenever you use anything on a Swiss Army knife, you're using a subpar version of that thing.
Sure.
Whether it's a toothpick, a magnifying glass, a little saw, whether it's a bottle opener, a can opener. I mean, bottle openers work pretty much as well as any other bottle opener, so I give them that. But
scissors you can't cut.
You
hair
can't
with.
cut shit with the scissors. You know, there are many things that you actually need a real one of those. Like, is it ever a good idea to use a Swiss Army knife Phillips head screwdriver? No. You should always use either a drill with a Phillips head bit, or if you're just doing one or two screws, then just a regular hand screwdriver is going to be much more effective than this half-assed, nubby little tool called a Swiss Army knife that's not good at anything. It's just barely adequate at many things. It's a horrible way to understand the world. That everything's like as though Swiss Army knife were good. You know, if this blowtorch is good, it could be made better by adding a little vest on it that holds a thing of pepper spray. Why? Well, because what if you're using this to light fires and then a burglar comes up to you, you'll have pepper spray right there. Okay, but then, you know, it's like every time I turn this way, I'll bump the pepper spray into things. I might accidentally set it off if I tip this over. It's a terrible idea, right? Okay, well, what we need to do then is make sure it's super secure so that there's no chance of accidentally setting it off. No, what we need to do is stop combining things, right? Let your pepper spray be your pepper spray. Let your torch be your torch. Stop combining things arbitrarily.
You know, it's funny, Michelle Way, as I was looking at my Swiss Army knife, I'm like, I honestly think Cameron would love everything that's on it. Swiss Army knife. I mean, I find mine, it's great for opening packages.
No, I mean,
when I
Swiss
don't
Army
have
knives
another tool.
are a handy tool to have around in instances when you, like, if you want to just pull out a quick knife and you don't want to grab a utility knife from the garage or something, it makes absolute sense to pull out a Swiss Army knife, because one of the things that's mostly functional as you desire on a Swiss Army knife is the main knife on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That works
Yeah,
fine for
yeah.
little jobs like that. That's
Yeah.
great. However, the only other thing that a person can reasonably think is a good idea to have on a Swiss Army knife and to use it accordingly is a bottle opener. Maybe a can opener if you don't have a better can opener than that.
Right, it's if you don't have anything better.
Right. So the thing is, the more often you use your Swiss Army knife, the poorer a choice it becomes to use. Because if you find yourself using the little scissors on your Swiss Army knife a lot, you need to get a pair of scissors. Corkscrew's fine. Yeah, corkscrew's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree with the corkscrew, the bottle opener, and a basic utility knife on one thing. There is a value to having a single utility tool that does multiple things. But even in that regard, there are much better utility tools available that aren't much bigger than a Swiss Army knife that are actually useful pliers. They have additionally, different drive bits on them. They've got a lot more actual utility than a Swiss Army knife, and it's because they're designed as a utility tool, multi-tool that incorporates only the things one might actually need on a multi-tool, not everything you can think of. Like, there's some Swiss Army knives have like everything you can think of on them. Well, the point is, not everything in life requires a vision. So, combining meow and meow together into one thing does comprise a vision of sorts, but it's a vision that can only be applied to certain kinds of things in certain contexts. For things that require a singular vision, like an essay, for example, any effort to combine multiple visions to attain a better outcome is doomed to fail, because any hybridization is going to fail to attain on the metrics of one vision, and it's going to fail to attain on the metrics of the other vision, and accordingly will end up just failing across the board. It's like you kind of have to decide which set of rules you're going to play under. And to succeed on those set of rules, and then you don't know necessarily what set of rules the person who's reading it is going to want you to succeed on, right? But you should be able to know intuitively that they are going to want one specific thing and not a hybrid of a bunch of different things. The best way to show me you're a good chef is not to cook a hybrid appetizer, entree, soup, salad, dessert course. that's, you know, a little bit of fish, a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of lettuce, a little bit of blue cheese. Well, there's various reasons why one might struggle with an essay. For example, ISTPs and ISFPs struggle with essays because they can't generate enough words. They can't make shit up. I like ESFPs might struggle with essays because they uh, they have a hard time of sounding intellectual or fancy. You know, that would be more of an eighth slot NE TI polar reality, right? Uh, an ESTJ might struggle with essays because they don't get the idea really of having a single point. They just want to talk about all the different things they know about a given thing without having a specific point or any of those things being determinate. Just like, here are all the possible things I know about this. What are you looking for?
I just had like a lip gloss and I lost it. It'll show up. I don't know what I did. Sorry, I didn't mean to make
It's
you-
fine. Well, the thing is, what happened tonight is that I got fed up with an ESTJ, you know, hiring me to do a job and then not letting me do it. You know, not letting me do the job that I believe I was hired to do. Um, you know, it's like, well, which one of these potential manager candidates do you want to hire as the manager? Well, let's hire them both and make them co-manager. That's not the job they applied for, right? They didn't apply for the co-manager job. And they don't want to go through your extended trial phase or whatever, you know? Either hire them for the job and trust them to do the work you entrust them to do, or hire the other one for the job, trust them to do the work you want them to do. Don't hire them as co-managers and try to have them evaluate each other's work. It's insane. He's not a chess kid, he's a debate kid.
Morning, Katie. Meow meow.
You know, it's like I didn't necessarily have that problem, Katie. I didn't start out young being too verbose in essays, I don't think. I think like I remember feeling through most of my school career like, oh no, I gotta write 3 pages. Um, but at a certain point, that left me entirely, and I'm not exactly sure when that did, but I remember feeling that way in school, at least in like grade school and middle school, maybe not so much in high school. I just didn't. I guess I didn't like writing papers. You know, I didn't like the topics. I didn't like what I was supposed to write about. I didn't like. I didn't like finding quotes in the book. I just didn't like writing essays. I hated it really. Now I wouldn't mind it at all, but that would be because if I'm going to write an essay about something, it would be about a specific topic that I felt like writing about, and you know, being FI polar, I guess, has something to do with the fact, maybe SI conscious as well, has something to do with the fact that for most of my life, I didn't really get that I couldn't trust anybody intellectually. I really didn't understand that until some time after college, you know? Um, I kept sort of naively going into educational experiences, assuming they knew what they were talking about, trying to figure it out, being confused, um, but not really assuming that maybe they were wrong. You know, not even really considering that maybe they were wrong and they didn't know what they were talking about. Uh, just thinking that I didn't understand them well enough or something. And then the flip side of that being not believing that other people didn't understand me, but concluding they were faking it to avoid answering my points or something. So I was pretty confused about things for a long time, but not anymore. Now I have the clarifying power of cognitive functions informing the clarifying power of dialectic. I feel like I understand most things that need to be understood pretty clearly, but I'm still potentially triggered by things. So just because I understand that Chawa can't isn't purposefully anti-polaring me, you know, she's not playing anti-pole vault, trying to pole vault over vision and concept entirely on purpose just to annoy me, you know. She cannot help it. She's anti-polar.
That's what I say about my mom too. A lot of times, like I know that like I'm not the best when it comes to like sending like follow through just in general, but like you know like putting in those cards, I know it's helpful and stuff, but I, I just would rather it come from me than like have it.
Yeah, well, that's very anti-polar too. It doesn't matter that it doesn't mean anything. It's just following through on through the motions, you know.
Yeah, like I mean, like for the people who send gifts and cards and stuff, I actually really do want to send out thank you cards, um, in the mail to say thank you for the gifts. But like I figure a year later is not gonna hurt. Like saying thank you to people, like um, you know, I just don't see a rush, and my mom wants it done, and she, like Eric said to me, like like we both said almost at the same time, like she can't help herself. She doesn't realize that like she only sees it as helpful because that's what she's trying to be, I guess.
Yeah, well, um, the thing is about essays is it just struck me what I did not understand when I was in school, did not understand until years later when I taught school, was how bad everyone else's work was in comparison to mine. So when I would struggle with writing essays, it would be like, I can't, I'm not going to write a good enough essay or whatever. But once I was a school teacher, I realized like the quality of kids' work authentically done by themselves is quite low consistently.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the writing's poor, the ideation's poor. That I was better than average high school students at writing probably when I was in sixth or seventh grade, but I didn't perceive myself as such because I wasn't reading other people's essays, you know? And I wasn't engaged critically with the subject anyway. It's not like I was it never occurred to me to compare myself against other people, really. I just compared myself against standards that I believed other people exemplified, usually to my own detriment, if I did any comparison at all. And I just instead projected my own frame of reference and assumed that the overall level of work of my peers was better than it was.
Well, I think that's like a superpower. Because, like, to not be thinking about other people's work, like, I constantly was. I knew, like, now looking at school, it probably was an ENTJ who was like doing like extra in the class and pulling shit off. Um, and me just being like, whoa, like they're so much smarter than I am because they do so much better on tests. Like,
Well, I mean, I assumed that too. I assumed that people who got better grades than I did were smarter than me, which I now know
all right, I'm coming.
to just be this kind of
Let's go.
false narrative inscribed in us by school, basically.
Yeah.
But writing, thought, manifestation. Be careful what you write. I don't find that it plays out that way for me, but it's because I guess I'm an any-dom. There are endless possible compilations of words that I might conditionally consider as words that I might say or affirm. I might even write them down conditionally. But I reserve the right to delete them and change them at any time, you know. At the same time, I am very careful in my language, such that even though I live stream all the time, I rarely say anything that I regret, and almost never say anything I seriously regret. I can think of a few instances, but the most egregious of them are about personal stuff, not about the world. Alas, the beat goes on. Ah, well. So I feel good and vented now. I feel like I've explained why I was so frustrated, and I don't feel so frustrated anymore. I feel like I've taken a wonderful fresh breath of Mountain Dew. That I finally tasted the feeling of wind upon my skin. That I finally smelled the sound of the forest echoing through the trees. You know, those kind of things. Rachel's so right about that counselor. I had not even thought about that. What she really meant was, I don't understand this because it's too hard for me. Therefore, you shouldn't do it. That's a terrible reason to advise him not to do that, you know? Um, it, it suggests both a lack of intuition on her part and ignoring the fact that probably her own subjective ego things are engaging her towards that directionality. She's ignoring her FI and the way her FI is impacting this, believing herself to be focused on the appropriately external outcome unlinked to her. You might say, well, Eric, don't you have your ego caught up in this too? Well, I guess so. I guess I do have my ego caught up in it, but I would also say that I have a very reasonable professional objection, namely, I'm not applying for a sous chef position, nor am I applying for a co-chef position. I'm not applying for any position. I'm accepting this work under certain conditions, not under any conditions. And, you know, no, I won't. If you'd prefer to not have me as the chef, I won't be an assistant chef to the other chef you prefer. It's your prerogative to choose whichever chef you want, but you know, since you refuse to allow your son to cook his own soup independently of anybody else's explication of it, of course, you know, it's like he began writing these essays under this horrible gaming framework in the first place, so the whole vision is flawed fundamentally. When you have to game your gaming to make sure that they don't catch on to your gaming and therefore cause it to backfire, and all of a sudden you're suggesting that you should present your son as having only accomplished some of the things he's accomplished so that he's less likely to trigger their gaming notices, well, at that point, you're definitely overthinking things, right? Anyway, now that I have successfully, yeah, I mean, the diligent ones are the ones that are most impressive to me too, but it's because, to me, it's not impressive to be me. I can be me easy. It takes zero effort at all, right? It's impressive to attain results in ways that are not being me. So obviously, I'm going to look kind of jealously at the people who've got an excellent relationship with SE, excellent relationship with TE. I'm going to, even TESI, you know? SI is my fourth slot. I'm aware enough of my deficits in those areas that I'm going to unavoidably look kind of jealously at those people who don't have any problems with those areas, even so far perhaps as to make a bunch of videos in which I say that they're not smart, they're just effective. Although I will say, I only started really ascribing to that worldview after I understood cognitive functions, when I realized, oh, I'm holding myself up to standards I'll never be able to meet and shouldn't try to meet, really, you know, shouldn't expect of myself. I shouldn't expect of myself to be heavily impact focused because it's not a dominant function of mine. You know, it's like I feel all these vulnerabilities about SE things, about being accused of not following through, being you know, not like a pussler or whatever. And once I learned about cognitive functions, I was able to kind of, you know, accept myself for who I was a lot better. And I guess it probably instigated some anger at the world's relentless assault on us all by projecting every value, even competing values, as things upon which you ought to attain. So, certainly, ENTPs, INFJs, INTPs, INFPs are especially likely to get hammered by the world because we've got a bad relationship with sensing. And sensing is prioritized because, you know, for a lot of people at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the results. Well, I also am impressed by effective people. I was impressed by the handyman we hired to paint the wall. I think
Yeah.
he did a phenomenal job of a makeshift solution in a short time frame.
Yeah.
But I no longer feel like I am inadequate in some way because I'm not like them. I accept that they have their strengths, I have mine. Mine are considered less useful by the world in general, but perhaps more interesting. So, there's a trade off for everything. Anyway, now that I've vented adequately and spewed my frustration onto the world, I shall bid you a very pleasant evening. Hopefully, I didn't just pass on my irritation onto you, and now you're irritated on my behalf. If I did that, then I'm sorry for playing FI past the hot potato. And watch your fingers. Until tomorrow, have a very pleasant good evening.